Welcome to Soul Tears, a podcast featuring moments that move your deepest self to take action. It's a place where guests share emotionally charged aha moments. While guests share these powerful stories, we all learn a little along the way. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Soul Tears. I'm so glad you could spend some time with us today. My name is Sean Block. I'm your host, and today we're talking with Leanne Bennet. And she just dropped some real bombs on us at a young age, after college, in a young marriage with young kids. She finds out her dad has committed suicide. And the surprising part is she wonders why she wasn't first. She talks about years of fantasizing about suicide and how she finally was able to get help. And she talks about the importance of things like having fun, in life, doing things that are, enjoyable. And her motto is, she wakes up and, says that every day is going to be the best day ever. But it's not always that way, but that's a good way she kind of frames her day. So we talk about a lot of different things, and I really kind of connected with her because one of the things that's helped her is sharing her story and talking to people. And so as she was, getting help with her depression and her suicidal ideations and everything, she went out and talked to people and shared her experience and shared things about her. And that's inspiring to me. And that's something I'm trying to do more of, is share more of my story and have a podcast to try to share some positive things and some lessons learned. And I'm grateful for her for sharing that with us today. So hope you get a lot out of this episode. Without further ado, here's my discussion and conversation with Leanne Bennett. So well, thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah.
I get that you got a little bit of kind of what the show is kind of about. It's kind of allowing people to share their like emotional aha moments or some moment that has impacted them or something like that we can learn from. So you have something you wanted to share with us today.
Yes. Well, and there's been so many aha moments, honestly, because I was like making notes. I listened to several of your different shows, the episodes you've had so far. I think you're doing a very, very great work that will benefit a lot of people. I really do. So, but yeah, I feel like my life has been just really a string of aha moments, pulled together, and they had these beautiful beads in between them. But it really means a lot when you go back and you just take a look at them and realize, all the different, I call them pivot points, the different pivot points, because they'll just turn your life, just turn it. I'm not going to say necessarily turn it around, because you don't necessarily need to be turned completely around, but just going in a new direction. And it's just, it's amazing. So you tell me where to start.
Well, so what's one moment you just have a strong feeling about maybe physically, mentally, something that just was kind of powerful for you?
Yeah. So the first major pivot point that I remember starts off actually was it was a rude awakening. It was 1993. Georgia had the first blizzard that we had experienced since the 1800s. Because those things just don't happen down here. And we were there, to experience that. We went back home just a couple of hours South Georgia. And then I got a call that my father had killed himself. Oh. And he was supposed to retire in 2 days. But what was so shocking, Sean, the aha moment, is that my first thought was, oh my God, he did it before I did. And up to that point, I don't remember having a conscious thought about taking my life. I don't remember being depressed. That was my first thought, my initial reaction. So, of course, with everything going on, I didn't have time to dive into that right away. We had to, deal with the logistics of what was going on. And he had left several notes saying, to take care of the finances, that she would get my mom would get the insurance and get his retirement and all this stuff. So nothing changed as far as that goes. So some time lapsed. That's when we moved to Texas. It was about 3 months later. And then I had time to kind of take breath and think, okay, why did that statement come up in my mind? What's going on here? And the next 6 years was, I said, that was my drug of choice. I was constantly fantasizing about how to escape, how to get out of what I was in. And it wasn't like a bad situation. I didn't think it was a bad situation. I wasn't being abused. I wasn't, all these kind of things. But what I realized, Sean, is that I lost my voice. Growing up, I had allowed my mom to make all my decisions for me and let her be the person who basically controlled what I did. Now, I'm not saying that, again, it wasn't like an abusive thing. It was just those boundary issues. I had given up control. Then when I got married, I did the same thing with my ex-husband. With my husband at the time, I gave him total control of what I was supposed to do, what decisions. And anytime they or he said, okay, this is what we're going to do, I just went with it. Whether or not I agreed with it, didn't matter. So now I've got these two forces, my mom and my husband, both making my decisions. So the only way I could see to get out of this was just to fantasize, well, what if I wasn't even there? So that was a severe aha moment. And I remember after a year or so, and I never said anything to anybody, number one, didn't tell anybody. Number two, you would have never known it. Nobody who looked at me would have thought there's someone who's depressed or suicidal. Never. Because it was important to me to keep my guard up. It was important for me to look the part. I got up every morning, I got dressed, I put my makeup on, did whatever thing I was supposed to do. And then when the kids were down for naps, I would sit in the bathroom floor and just cry my eyes out. And when I was driving on the expressway or going over the overpass, I would think, boy, I could just go over this overpass and be done. And it would look like a car wreck, and that would be, it would just, the different ways were just, constant. But again, for some reason, I started telling myself that this is how everybody thought. This is what everybody does, And I remember we lived next door to a church, and I walked over to the church playground one day. I was sitting in the swings, and it was kind of overcast. And this particular day, I planned it out to the detail. And I saw what I was going to do. I saw how I would get it taken care of. And as far as the kids, I was convinced if the kids needed a better mom, that I could not be the mom that they needed, even though I was a stay-home mom with them doing all the things, all the right things. I was convinced that my husband needed a better wife, one that was more suitable, just on and on and on. That everybody would be better off if I just wasn't there. And then this next aha moment was not that, because I've heard a lot of people say, that, okay, I thought I can't do this to my kids, that, I just can't. But see, I had already told myself they'd be better off. This was going to be doing them a favor, which is so awful. But that's what I believed. But then the word legacy popped up in my mind. I could see it so clearly. And I realized, wait a minute. When a parent takes their life, it increases the chances of the child, by like 25%. And if it's a grandparent, then it also increases their chance. I said, Leanne, look at the legacy that you are leaving these kids. Not only did their grandfather take their life, but if their mom took their life too, you are telling them that this is a perfectly viable option. And this is not the legacy that I want for my kids. And Sean, that was my next aha moment. That's when I said, okay, I gotta figure out what's happening here. I gotta do something. I gotta do something different.
Did you feel like guilty, or did you feel like just bad that you even had those thoughts, or did you start to say what changed that your thinking started to change?
It was so strange because really it had the feeling bad part really didn't. I still believed that this was normal behavior. I still thought that other people had these thoughts all the time. And that's what is so crazy about it. And really when I had said, up in the detail that this was my drug of choice. And when you're talking about your drugs, you're talking about something that's bringing you some kind of comfort. So in this bizarre way, it was like my comforting place to go, to imagine the world that I was not in, that I was not a part of. And I was always thinking about just getting in the car and driving where nobody knew me and just starting all over. So that was, so whack when I talk about it now. And this is another one of my, again, another pivot point for me was it had been on so long. And even now, while I'm talking about it, I feel like I'm talking about somebody else. And that I remember the day that when it just hit me and I thought, oh my gosh, I have gone a whole year. I remember when I said I've gone a whole week and have not had a suicidal fantasy. Because that's how common it was for me. It would be like, what am I going to wear today? I can wear my jeans, I can wear a dress, I can wear this shirt, or I can just kill myself and not worry about it. I mean, that would be like all day long. That would be my options. And then the day that I said, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about killing myself for a year. Wow. And I would love to say, okay, here's the steps that I took. 1, 2, 3. That would be so great that I could, market that and tell people, okay, this is the pill that worked. But it wasn't. It wasn't like I did finally go ahead and I told, some people, I told my husband what was going on. When we first went to see a doctor or see a psychiatrist, she said, she looked at me after about 30 minutes or so, and I had told her my story, and she said, I just want to tell you something. She goes, you're the best I've ever seen. I said, what do you mean? And she said, I almost let you go without anything. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, well, you sat here and you're telling me how wonderful your life is and how great everything is. And the home you grew up in was just perfect and everybody did great. And she said, you look like you're doing fine. And she said, but in your eyes, I can see everything is not okay.
Wow.
And I'm so grateful that she managed to just ask the right questions and go a little bit deeper and look into it. And I had some other people, say that to me. Yeah, I could see it in your eyes. And now when they see me, they're like, oh yeah, you're good. You're fine. But, so I did start some therapy and I started some medication and, like just working through so much. Setting up boundaries was tremendous, and finding my voice. And I think that was the main thing. If you've heard of walking on eggshells, well, now I say walking on Legos, because that's so much worse. But when you feel like you're living a life where you're walking on Legos, that's not going to be healthy for anybody, right? I mean, you're just tiptoeing around. You don't want to disrupt anything. I say you don't want to rock the boat. And now I tell my clients, I said, rock the damn boat already, okay? It's fine. It's scary, but do what you got to do to take care of yourself.
How long ago was this visit to the doctor where she saw it in your eyes?
From now, that was like 20 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time. Another important part of my recovery was sharing my story. And we did have a platform where I was able to go and start sharing in these different groups. And this was another thing too that really made me feel like I was on the right track, is because when I would just share my story, so many people, particularly women, but men too, would say, how did you know what I'm going through? You just told my story. I feel exactly the same way. So when I was thinking that, okay, everybody feels like that, I wasn't too far off, but we have this idea, first of all, that we're the only one, that nobody would understand. So we're not going to talk about it. And I don't know that it's really I wasn't afraid of the stigma. Well, maybe a little bit, but just afraid to say, hey, I'm not okay. The things, there are some things that's wrong here. Because most of the time, of course, you're not talking about, if you start making changes in your own life, that's going to disrupt the changes in people around you. And to me, that was what was so terrifying. And I think that's why people will just stay in their cocoon. They'll just stay in that place where they're just, again, they're too scared to rock the boat, because right now everybody else seems happy with how things are going. So we'll just keep it as it is.
So when when you lost your father and you went through all that period, you never talked about it with other people in terms of how you were feeling or was going on with you? Were you just kind of just dealing with it, or?
At that time, yeah, at the initially the first few years, no, I didn't talk to any about it. I mean, I didn't mind saying, that my father passed away, my father committed suicide. I mean, that I wasn't trying to hide that, because that was a fact. But I was not at the place where I was going to say, oh, and by the way, I've been thinking about killing myself all day too. Just that part didn't come up in conversation. It wasn't part of who I felt like I needed to be.
Did you share with anybody that you were like in crisis, that you just kept it all inside?
I kept it all inside for at least 3 years. Didn't say a word to anybody. And my husband had no idea. Nobody knew. I mean, it was just my big secret.
Did you write it down? Did you journal it all? Is it all just sitting in your head?
I might have journaled it. If I did, those are long gone, I'm sure. But the majority of it was just constantly replaying these thoughts in my head and just going on and finding these creative ways to escape and get out of this. And that either nobody would understand, or this is just normal. Everybody feels this way. Everybody just deals with it in their own way.
But is it like, was it like almost an obsession of how this could happen and what can you do? And like, was it just like, were you always just thinking about just?
Absolutely. Yes. And that's
obsessive thinking, maybe.
That's great that you use that word. Yes, because I've been doing some other studies and stuff on obsession lately. Part of what I'm doing in my coaching practice is coaching people. It says weight loss, but what I'm really working and focused on is coaching, getting people to stop obsessing about their weight. That was my goal, especially at this year, this time of my life, where I'm in this phase. I just want to be done with this already. I'm tired of wondering, how much do I weigh every day? What am I going to eat every day? Freaking out, being panicky. So I have reached this point where I'm like, I don't even think about it now. And that was the same way. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm an obsessive person. I think all of us find our obsessions and we put into it. But honestly, when I was going through that, Sean, that's what was happening, is that I would wake up in the morning and the first thing I would think is, okay, when are these thoughts going to start? And oftentimes they would start before my feet hit the ground. I was like, you know what? I can just quickly kill myself and not have to worry about dealing with this day, not have to go through with it. I was like, no, Leanne, the kids need to be fed. So I'd get up and I'd feed the kids. And then I think, okay, well, that's done. But now do I, go for a walk, or are we going to do this? Or I could just kill myself and not have to think about it. Yeah. And it was just, absolutely.
Default thought.
Absolutely. Yes. Very default. And again, going around thinking everything is fine. And so you read a lot about it and you hear a lot about people that are depressed and like can't get out of bed. Don't get showered. Don't fix themselves up. That wasn't me. That was not me. I got up every morning on time. I got myself dressed. I got the kids dressed. I did all the regular routine things that you do. But all this going on in my mind constantly.
Did your doctor ever talk to you about maybe a diagnosis for what you're going through? Was it just depression? Was it other things, or?
Yeah, no, right off the bat, she said, I said, what do you mean you I'm the best? What are you talking about? And she goes, you're clinically depressed. I said, what? No, me? You don't know me very well, do you? And she's like, yeah, you're clinically depressed. And she said, I would really rather you not go home right now. I would really rather, I would like to send you to the hospital. But we were there as students. My husband was in school, and she said, I know you don't have the insurance or the money to pay for that. And she said, but I need you to sign this paper that you're okay going home and you're not going to harm yourself tonight before you see somebody tomorrow.
Wow. So you were in college. You were in college at this time?
He was in graduate school.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in graduate school. I had finished college. He had graduated, and then we'd moved to Texas for him to go to graduate school. And we had these three little ones, real tiny. And So I was just, it was a mess. And she's like, yeah, I want you to go and get all this medication, and we're going to do this and this and that. And so I was kind of a wreck at that point because I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like my shell was breaking off. And yes, there was a part of me that was so relieved, but then there was also a part of me that was absolutely terrified. And I've come to find out that that is life, that when you start making changes, you're always going to have that part of you that's excited, and you're going to have that part of you that's terrified. And the sooner we can get to the place where we can embrace both of those feelings and move ahead, then the better off we're going to be.
So, wow. So you're, was it when somebody said the word depression, had that even crossed your mind, like that you were depressed, or that you didn't know why you were there to see? You're like, something's wrong with me. Like, why did you go see her? Just because you were just having these thoughts, or?
No. Well, yes, because I told my husband, I told him, I said, right. And I said, I'm having these thoughts and I'm not sure why. I'm sure it's fine. It'll pass. But yeah, it's been a few years, that I've been thinking this way. So he had contacted someone that he knew that had some issues, some mental issues. I don't know what the situation was. But anyway, so they gave us this person's name. And so we made the appointment, and he went in with me. My husband did, which hindsight, I'm glad that he did, because he was the one that was sitting there, and he was like, wait a minute, you didn't tell her that your father committed suicide. And she said, what? And I said, oh yeah, my father committed suicide. It was 3 years ago. It's fine. I'm over it. And she's like, oh, that's important information. And he said, did you tell her that you wanted to kill yourself today? And she said, what? And I said, well, yeah, but I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, that's how flippant I was about it, because it had become my norm.
Wow. Well, thank God you had somebody with you.
Yes, absolutely. Because otherwise I think that she would have missed that in my eyes. That was when she started looking, and she was like, okay. But it was a journey. It was something that, and then since then, it had opened up so many doors for me. Like I said, I started speaking and started sharing. I eventually got, after I had that experience where I said, oh my gosh, I haven't had these suicidal thoughts for a year. And I wasn't depressed anymore, which actually led up to my divorce, which is another aha moment, because he kept saying, you need to get back on your medication. You need to get back on your medication. I said, I'm not depressed. I'm not having these thoughts. I don't know where this is coming from. But he had been prescribed some meds and was kind of resentful that I wasn't on it anymore. Plus I was learning to stop walking on Legos and speaking up. And that was where I was kind of rocking that boat thing. And that didn't sit well. It didn't sit well. So we were married for 24 years, but I remember asking so many times, can we please go get some counseling? Let's just talk to somebody. And the last time that he said, I'm not going to see a counselor until you get back on medication, my aha moment in my head was, we're done here. And I started making my plan and putting the pieces together to change that direction, to pivot and go in a new direction. So, yeah.
And so are you under any care now, or for depression, or?
Great question. No, I'm not. And that's where I was going, is that the job that I was offered was to come and be, they called it a peer specialist, which is basically a coach, where I was coaching groups of adults who had a variety of mental health issues. But I was teaching from my experience, my personal experience, rather than my degree, because I don't have a degree in therapy or psychology. But I was able to share what I had been through, and the fact that I had gotten better, I had gotten well completely, 100%. I'm not under the care of any doctors. And it was, even after I was done, I was still checking in with them from time to time, and then they, released me. And so now I make it a point, like I said, to be intentional about my days, to find the things that makes me happy, to find things that are fun, and knowing that there is a healing component in that. But we get up in the morning, and when we're depressed already, the first thought is generally, oh my God, not another day. What is this? I can't do it anymore. And you can do it. Keep doing it. Keep going. And it's rewiring. I totally believe rewiring those thought patterns in our head. I mean, that sounds so simplistic, and it's not to downplay any treatment that anybody's getting. I mean, there are some fantastic treatments out there, and there's such a variety because everybody comes at it from a different angle, right? No, I don't think one particular diagnosis is going to show up exactly the same way in each person. But for me and for what I've been able to go through and help others, like I said, the journaling you said is so important to get these new thoughts going.
One of the things that that seems to really help is when you do share your story, when you do talk about your experience, it seems to telling your story is like a healing thing. And in your experience, you said you went to a lot of groups. So how did you get started in speaking to people? And
how
did that help?
Yes, no, that was so key in my healing. At the time, my husband was actually in graduate school to be a pastor. And so we were in the church, and we had the church platform. So I started getting invitations to speak at first. It started like women's lunches and banquets and things like this. And then eventually I was speaking at like revival services and all these, different things and different occasions. And then I went to some other activities that were secular in nature, speaking and sharing at, club meetings and bank events and different things, because it was more, it just became a recovery story. And even when you're in the process of healing, because at the time I was still under doctor's care, I was still, I was on medication, but I was at a better place. And people are so shocked when they, when you see something, because we have, I think, in our mind what we think mental illness looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 90% of the time, it doesn't look anything like we have it pictured. Right? We think about the guy that's under the bridge that's homeless, that hasn't had a shower, like I said, in months. That's where our mind initially goes. And that's not all there is to it. There's someone sitting right next to you who may be struggling.
How did you have the, I don't know, guts is the right word, or courage, or like, putting yourself out there to share your story? It's, mental illness is is a stigma, and it's hard. It can be. And like, you're sharing this very personal information with your church, with different people. How did you get yourself to that point where you could start talking about it?
You know what? I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't know. I've always been, I guess, kind of an outgoing person, kind of gregarious, and I studied, just being in front. I've always loved live theater. I was always in plays and stuff. But when this became, my talk or my platform and all, it was like I didn't even give myself a chance to question it. I didn't stop to say, is this the right thing to do? Or what are they going to say? Is anybody going to be offended? That didn't even cross my mind. All I knew is that I'm not the only one that feels like this. And so I started jumping on every opportunity that I could and said, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what I've been through. And then suddenly one day, after I've been doing that for years, suddenly one day it just stopped. I wasn't getting invitations. I wasn't, and it was okay. It was like, this is fine. And I suddenly didn't have that urgency to share that anymore. And to be honest, it's just come back up. And I think, and I don't mean the depression at all, but just these platforms. Maybe it's just me putting myself out there with my coaching practice, saying, hey, these are some things. And the reason, I don't know if you've gone into this, but my practice is called Third Quarter Life. And it was originally designed because of what I experienced with my dad. because it started hitting me. I said, maybe he's not the only one who's having a hard time facing retirement and getting into that pre-retirement. You start panicking, am I going to have enough money? What am I going to do with my free time? What do we, and it just becomes kind of a scary time. And it shouldn't be. It should be a lot of fun. So that's how I started developing it. And you just, you take these things in different angles and just kind of figure out, okay, where's it going to land? And it seems to right now, this is the direction that it's landing in.
So that you're more recently talking about your experiences before, where maybe for a few years you wasn't part of your everyday conversations or whatever. So you had to kind of reintroduce that vulnerability again.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
And how does that feel now?
Honestly, because I'm in such a different place and I'm having to really reach back into the past, for that, I've had to really wrestle with it a little bit, because I don't want to introduce these negative vibrations. Right. I don't want to introduce these negative thoughts again, and I've been having a little bit of anxiety about it. But there's a part of me, though, a bigger part of me that says, you know what, I feel like this is right. I feel like so it's okay for me to go ahead and experience these little rocky moments, because I know they're going to pass. I know I'm not going to land there, because I have tools to keep pushing me forward, and that this needs to be heard right now.
Well, do you think, because you're a coach, you have all this wisdom and stuff. I don't want people to know that I almost wanted to kill myself. I mean, does that hurt my credibility? Does that how you kind of think that way, right? A little bit oh my gosh, I can't, but it seems like the opposite is true. The more you share the more it's going to help your business. I mean,
yes, exactly.
You're being more real.
Right. And that's the difference to me. One of the many differences between coaching and therapy is because, when I worked at the Behavioral Health Center, I was working with all of these therapists that were there, and they're all teaching. I mean, yes, they probably have their own struggles, but they are never going to share their struggles. They're trained to not do that.
Yes.
On the other hand, I was certified to share my story. So you've got these professionals that are sharing from their educational standpoint that is so helpful and so beneficial. But then you've also got a coach or a peer specialist that is sharing over here from their experience and going, when I say I know what you've been through, I know what you've been through. Okay. The exact circumstances, of course, is obviously different. And I think I had heard on your one of the podcasts talking about bipolar. And that specifically has not been my struggle, but I've worked with people who suffer from bipolar, who are in different stages and different places with it. And so it's something I can relate to.
Yeah. And wow. It's, have you had times, like you said, some anxiety, you've had some kind of, it's not every day is the best day ever, but there's some tough days, right? Is every day perfect?
It's
have you had some challenges since you've started your,
Of course. Yes. Of course. There's challenges, but the beautiful thing is that, especially over the last, I would say 2 years, right before I met my new husband, after I got my divorce, which was, about 7 years ago, I knew that I was basically going to be reconstructing every part of my life, because everything that I had known and everything that I had done was now, that door was shut. And so I was going to be redesigning my life with purpose. And not everybody, number one, gets the opportunity to do that. Number two, not everybody wants to do that. Okay. They may be in marriages that aren't healthy or relationships that are toxic, but they're not ready or don't feel like they're ready to take the steps necessary and think, okay, this is just it. And that was a thought that I had when I was getting ready to depart my marriage. Was I remember thinking, some people, you've heard a lot of people say, oh, I can't do this anymore. My thought was, oh, I can definitely do this. I've been doing this for 24 years and I can go on and do it. I don't want to. I don't want to keep walking on Legos. And as long as I'm in this relationship, as long as this is, going on, I'm going to have to keep myself and who I am hidden. So when I made that change or made that decision to step out on my own, yeah, I was like redesigning everything. So that brings me around to, those bad days, those anxious days. Sure, there have been a lot of sleepless nights, tossing and turning. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Have I lost my mind? But I always come back to, I think we're all looking for three things. And this seems real basic. I think we're looking to be loved, we're looking to have fun, and we're looking to be happy. That's it. And everything we do in life goes back to one of those three things, right? Mm-hmm. To be happy, to have fun. And we start telling ourselves, oh no, I'm an adult now. I can't really have fun except maybe on the weekends, No, every day has got to have some fun in it. And finding what makes you happy. And then, being loved, of course, is going back to learning, love yourself. You got to look for that love in you. And when you're intentional about it, Sean, when you're writing it down and journaling every day, I start my day saying, what do I love about me? How can I love me more? Because I can't love the people around me more if I'm not loving me more first.
Well, I was going to ask you, so like what's like one, mental health tip that you could give people, or, wellness tip that,
mm-hmm.
You've given a few of us today, but what's like a good tip for us?
I think, the one major thing would be tell somebody. If you haven't spoken up, if you've never shared how you're feeling, if any of this resonates in any way whatsoever, tell somebody, because nobody can help you if they don't know what's going on. But when you can just speak up, if you already have done that and you're already, doing those things, then I would say give yourself some credit. You're doing fine. Stop beating yourself up. Because that was, oh my gosh, that was so, I had that, down to, perfection, where I could, be critical to myself constantly, what I was doing wrong, everything that, oh, I'm terrible at this, I'm terrible at that. And stop that. So get your journal. And I've told every one of my clients, that's one of the first things I tell them. They're like, well, I don't like to write stuff down. I said, well, I'm sorry, it's not an option. This is a non-negotiable, because you've got to get this stuff out of your brain. And the best way to do it is writing it down. And I said, I don't care what your negative messages are, write them down. And it's so funny because I said, now read them back to me. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I said, read it back, read it out loud. And they're like, you're so stupid. And they're like, well, I don't really think that. I said, exactly. But you let that thought round just go crazy in your head that you can't do anything right. But as soon as we write it down, you've taken away that power.
Now, one other thing is, like, so you used to have all these thoughts swirling in your head about fantasies of suicide or anything, and those have quieted down. Do you have thoughts about other things? I mean, have you replaced those thoughts with, are you obsessing about being the best day ever?
Yes, actually, yes. Very definitely. I know it sounds creepy, it sounds crazy, but yes, I do a routine day where I'm like, this is going to be the best day ever. I tell people that in public, and that has been so fun when you go to the grocery store and they say, oh, how are you doing? I say, oh, it's the best day ever. And they'll just drop everything and look at me like, what? They're like, okay, yeah. And so it's contagious, and it just builds it up. And even when I'm not really feeling, when my gut is going, this doesn't really feel like the best day, I'm going to go ahead and verbalize it, because it's like the writing it down. If I go ahead and speak it, then a part of me is going to start to believe it. And I don't know what the best day ever looks like. It looks like this moment right now. Mm-hmm. Why not? But as long as we come into it and go, oh God, I got to do this podcast. I don't even know this guy, Sean. He's going to think I'm so stupid. Oh my gosh. So that would be a totally different energy. Completely. Yes.
I hear you.
But it was so great, because after about 4 days of telling my husband, he's like, good morning, how's it going? I said, it's going to be the best day ever. And he's like, when is this going to be over? Are you going to stop saying that, please? And I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's working for me. So I'm going to keep on doing it. And so now he has picked up on it. And that's the best part. He has picked up. So when he leaves, he's like, I hope you have the best day ever, darling. And I'm like, oh, I will.
I like it. I might have to use that too in my little journal,
Yes,
Just
please.
write it down every day.
Yes, please. And again, it wasn't something that I would love to give credit to somebody, but it just kind of popped in my brain one day. I was like, you know what? Because I've been writing the positive affirmations, going on and, again, being grateful, writing down what I'm grateful for and how thankful I am. And then I'll take a walk and I'll say all the affirmations I've just written down. Now I'll say them out loud as I'm walking around the block, walking around the neighborhood. And so I want to be that, silly, goofy, happy girl. And the couple of days where you had asked me, was there anything that hit? I had this anxiety attack, and I have not dealt with it. Even when I was depressed, I didn't have anxiety very much. But it was just really, really severe. And I called my coach, who is my daughter. So we kind of coach each other and help each other out. And so she was able to kind of talk me through it. And there again, speaking it out loud. And, you don't have to worry about, okay, what if they're going to give me bad advice? Well, you don't necessarily need advice. Sometimes you just got to say it out loud. Because I'm liken it to a clothes dryer sometimes. I said, you have this thought in your mind, this one critical thought, and it's just kind of bouncing around like in a dryer. And the faster it goes, it's going to pick up other thoughts that are similar to it. And then they start bouncing around and they start snatching all these other, now you're going back to your childhood when you were just the worst kid ever. And it has just snowballed, into this negative, gross lint ball. But the quicker you can get a hold of it, and the quicker you can just say, okay, wait a minute, let me, first of all, breathe. All right, what's really going on here? Stop and breathe. That'd be my other tip, my other mental health tip. That has been a lifesaver. Breathe, stop, and take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story today. And you are, people can reach you. What's the best place to reach you to learn more about your coaching?
Third Quarter Life, all over the place. I'm also under Leanne Bennet, and Leanne has 2 N's and Bennett has 1 T.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I think I've even got some Pinterest stuff out there. And then my website is thirdquarterlife.com and thirdquarterlife@gmail.com. You can reach me by email.
What's the one thing you want people to connect with you? Like, if they had to go take an action right now, do you want them to email you? Do you want them to go to your website?
All of that.
Okay.
I would say
I'll list it all down below, and they can go and find you.
Honestly, I think, I would say go to the website and check it out. You can't mention it has a giant picture of me grinning I'm on a boat at St. Croix last year for my sister's 50th birthday.
Oh my God.
So we were having a blast. And do something fun today. That was it. I've just recently made you can get my printout on my website. It's turning your to-do list into your ta-da list. Now that sounds super cheesy, but it's a list of fun activities that you can plug into your daily to-do list because we are not having enough fun.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today. I'm so glad we got connected.
Me too. I have to tell Shelly, thank you so much. So,
and I will let you know when you'll hear this.
Sounds
and
great.
See this. So thanks for taking the video as well. And there you have it, our conversation with Leanne Bennet. And it was a really powerful episode for me. A couple things that hit home right away was, one, as I was saying in the beginning, she's talking about, she decided to start talking about her experience, and that was one of the things that helped heal her. So as she was, getting through her depression and working through that, she was speaking to audiences and sharing her personal experiences. And I think there's such a power of sharing your story, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is give people a chance to share their stories, because I think that's how we can connect with people, how we can heal. And, then she had some years where maybe it wasn't front and center in her mind. Her mental health issues were, maybe under control or not a big deal. But now she's reaching back and using the lessons that she's learned in her coaching business, and she's now pulling back some of those powerful things that she learned in the past to help, her clients, to help other people with their challenges and their situations. And that's what I need to do more of. I've gotten to a place where my mental wellness has been good. I'm doing some good things, but I have to remember that there's so much that I can share with people and how I got through it, because getting through it sometimes is, whatever thing you're going through, sometimes it just seems like it's impossible and you'll never get through it. So that was one of the things that I took today. I got to realize that how the importance of sharing your story when connecting with other people. And I loved how she talked about her best day ever. And every day is her best day ever, because, as she said, you only have one life, and it has to be your best day ever because it's all you got is right now. So grateful for our conversation with her, and in sharing like her understanding and how she's kind of gotten past, wanting to kill herself every day, and what kind of things that she's done to help herself, and her journaling and her intentions and all of mental health, the strategies that I would like to talk about. We all need a toolkit. We all need a toolkit of mental health tools to kind of keep us well. Gratitude, intentions, visioning, journals, those are all part of it. And the thing that I'm really going to add to my collection from this episode is sharing your story and talking about your story and your experiences, because that can really help you and everybody else. So as I always say, if you can change one person and tell one story, you can change the world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for spending time with us today. You can connect with us on Instagram at Sean Steve Block, and that's Block with an H. And as always, if you can change one person, you can change the world. We'll see you next time.